and there's not a current need. So, when we first got Tony's review, it was a very extensive review of our package back in January. We've worked very hard to address all of those comments, and we've addressed probably 85% of them. But we're at the end of the road in terms of trying to solve these, what I would call red herrings. And he had spoke previously about trying to find the boogeyman. I want you guys to try and think common sense wise that these POAs, they've been dissolved with the exception of, the Girl Scouts. The last thing that I had presented to you was, this was a change order that we had accepted to do when we were approached by the staff and by the board to upgrade all of those street posts. 130 some street posts from the FDOT to, the gateway standard. We did that as a willing partner, but it cost us $137,000 to do that. And we didn't have to do that, but we care about our community and we care about being a good partner. And if it never was the intention of Gateway to accept these roads, we just feel like we've done everything we can to try and be fair and reasonable and good partners to you. So, I would just ask that we use a little common sense. Now, the West Links and Commerce Lakes Drive comment, that's these roads down here. If we look at Tony's memo, he basically wants us to quit claim a deed from a dissolved association. We're unable to furnish that. So, this association was created in 1993 and it dissolved in 2012. And the reason I bring that up is that over the course of 24 years, there's never been a need to go in and ask for anything, any type of improvement like that. And the only way that you guys would be caught in a situation is if that HOA decided to reform, and then you would have to go and ask their permission to do something. So to me, it's a red herring. It's so unlikely. You've got title insurance. You're protected.
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda. We'll have an opportunity to discuss this as a board. This will come up as item 3BI.
Can we ask Rhonda some questions while she's still here?
Can we wait for it to come up?
Can you bring her back?
We do have other speakers. Yeah, sure.
Can we bring her back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly when the item comes up.
Thank you.
Next is John Grega.
I'm here representing the Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee, and basically to just answer any questions that you have regarding Phil Macy's report for our last meeting. I believe you have it in your agenda book. I don't have anything specific to address unless there's questions on his report.
Okay, thank you.
And next is Tom Goldstein.
Good afternoon. I'm here as an individual homeowner. I have two issues I want to address. One is the littorals. I live in Hampton Park. Lennar came in and they planted some plants around the lakes, and apparently they didn't do a very good job. So rather than have another bond, $20 million bond to stop the erosion, I would like to plant some plants on my own. And I understand that you have a list of approved plants, and I would like that list. And also I'd like to be able to disseminate this to other homeowners so that if they want to, they can plant plants. I think $100 now is better than $200 a month for 20 years. So if I could get that or sometime in the future, or if you could give it to Jim Brand, I think that'd be good. The other issue is the turnover of the lakes to the homeowners. Apparently, this is a Hampton Park issue. So apparently, Lennar is saying there's nothing wrong with the lakes. It's your position that they're not constructed properly, and there's a battle over who's right and who's wrong. So ultimately, you're refusing to accept it. Lennar wants to turn it over to us, the homeowners. Well, and there's an assessment of $50,000 to maintain these lakes. It's my view is that your position, that your sole purpose of existence is to maintain and operate the lakes. Maybe not sole purpose, but what's one of your primary purposes. And to turn them over to us because it's too difficult for you, to us, the homeowners who know nothing about maintaining the lakes, is just not, it's just not responsible. And I believe, and I don't have the citation with me today because I couldn't get to the law library. I had a doctor's appointment this afternoon. There's a provision of the California codes, the Florida codes, which states that at turnover, CDD shall condemn or accept property. So if you don't want to take the lakes over, condemn them. Don't turn them over to us. We don't know anything about lakes. I hope you just take this consider these facts. Thank you.
Thank you.
What was Tom's last name? I didn't get that.
Goldstein. And Mr. Brand had requested that we talk about the stormwater ponds in Hampton Park because there's people here in the audience that are interested in that. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. We've got one more speaker. Then I'll come back to that.
One more speaker, Darwin Lawson.
Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Darwin Larson. I'm a homeowner, and I'm also on the board of the HOA at Cypress Point. And here today to talk to you about an ongoing problem that seems to be going on quite a bit in our area, and it's pertaining the park behind the Trinity Lutheran Church. This past weekend, the pictures that are being passed around is what was found on Sunday morning. It is a common thing on the weekends that we see this. This past Saturday night, I was out until about midnight watching my Buckeyes win. And I came home, and you could barely turn into Cypress Point. The entire parking lot at the park was jam-packed full of cars. According to a resident inside of Cypress Point this past week, they had the sheriff's department out there around 10 o'clock. Some other neighbors had noticed that the party or whatever was going on had finally broken up about 1 a.m. I don't know what the right decision is for this park, but it seems to be bringing in a lot of this stuff right here, a lot of disrespect for our homeowners and for our community. You know, I'm not a racist person, or I'm not trying to imply that in any way, shape, or form. I know I'm probably going to take a beating from the cyber bully that lives in our area, but this needs to be addressed. It is just a complete disrespect. This is a beautiful park. I've been out there on the weekends walking my dog, and there have been several children playing in the park, in the playground, and there are grown men, adults, yelling and screaming obscenities while these kids were over there playing. And I just don't think that that's right in my book. And I would really like to have the board take something up with this. There's a lot of different options that's not going to be extremely costly to the communities, but something needs to be done about what's going on in our park over there. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I did, with regards to this gentleman's comments, I did contact the Lee County Sheriff's Office. We do have the deputies that come in the evening, and I've worked with them to change the schedule, so they will be coming in on Friday nights and Saturday nights to patrol those areas.
We have it clear, and I'm assuming the sign survived Hurricane Irma, that the park closes at dusk. So after dark, there shouldn't be anybody over there.
And nowadays, that's like 4:30.
Yeah, it's
So,
real early.
uh,
That's it. So they will be moving people out of there
Yes.
at dusk, after dusk. Okay, thank you. Now, and I know that with the board's permission, for the people of Hampton Park that would like to discuss their stormwater ponds, is it okay if we do that now? Since we have people that have time constraints. Any objection?
What item is that?
It isn't an item.
It's not an item,
It's just, it was going to be a discussion item either under the reports from the staff, or it was going to be supervisor comments.
Yeah, what you may want to do, Madam Chairman, is just to, because if the board wants to take action as an action item, then you would need to reopen the item for any comments from the public. You may wish to consider amending the agenda to add an item,
A walk-on?
a walk-on item, yes, and we can do it as 5H and take it out of order now. That would be appropriate. I guess it'd be discussion and possible action concerning the Hampton Park Stormwater Management System.
I'd make that motion.
And second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll open this up.
Want me to start it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Last meeting, we had a brief discussion. I presented a timeline, and I believe since then, Tony has sent out to all the supervisors a updated version of that timeline regarding the things and events that have taken place at Hampton Park relative to permitting and turnover. Last Tuesday, I believe it was, I met with Dave Loveland and Jessica Sulzer with Lee County Department of Community Development to talk about specifically the one issue that we have problems with Lee County. Keep in mind, this is a two-headed monster. We have South Florida Water Management District issues, which are not one and the same of Lee County issues. Lee County issue that we have a problem with has to do with the littorals and the deep water tree placement. After about an hour of good discussion with David and Jessica, the issue is that they made it perfectly clear they had documentation, without going into the details of whether it was right or wrong, they have documentation that led them to believe that it was appropriate to issue a certificate of compliance of construction, period. I said, I'm not going to get into an argument with you on that issue because I don't know what happened 6, 7, 8 years ago. Alls I do know is what is shown on the plans that you're asking us to take over for O&M is not what's in the field. It's that simple. And again, we went back and forth for a few minutes, and finally I said, well, let's do this. Before I went to the meeting, I took 24 pictures over at Hampton Park and showed them what is there right now, and the discussion got silent.
Got what?
Got silent. They could see that it was not in accordance with their own plans and specs that they had approved. I said, where do we go from here? And David Loveland suggested that he would open this up for a code enforcement review upon a request by me on this issue so that we get it resolved. I said, David, there's two issues here. One, it's either not done right and we want it done right, or it's done right and you still believe it's done right, in which case we want an LDO from you that you will acknowledge that what is there now is what is our limit of responsibility going forward. In other words, if it's not built in accordance with the plans and specs, You're not going to come into us the next day and issue us a non-compliance because you changed your mind. We can't play that game, not to this tune. He said he would go along with that. And so accordingly, he wanted the request. I immediately contacted Tony and Chris and suggested that we draft a letter for code enforcement inspection. Tony came back with, I think, a pretty good idea. He said, let's bring this before the board and get the board's acknowledgement or endorsement of that, and then we go from there. In front of you is a revised draft of an email, and David wanted this as an email. He said, don't do this with a letter and take all that time. Get an email to me.
And by the way, excuse some typos, my fat fingers were typing real fast today.
Anyway, you have in front of you a draft email that I had written, and Tony, with his red lines, changed, and I think it's for the betterment. But in essence, it's telling the county, and there's a very good chance we'll be doing the same thing with South Florida Water Management District, but with the county, guys, we understand that you've approved it. We don't have an issue with that. We can't fight that. What's done is done. However, you're asking us to take it over, and we can't take it over if we are of the opinion that it's contradictory to the permits, the development order, and certainly the plans and specifications. Would you come out and inspect it? And he said, you get the letter to us, I'll sign a case officer to it, and we'll do it. And I said, well, I certainly would want Lennar to be invited to the meeting. I would want their engineer to be invited to the meeting. Let's just get this thing off dead center so that at least the issue of littoral placement, and deep water trees is done. So we have that off the table, that the only thing left would be erosion or construction-related issues, which we were waiting on as-built before we even know the answer to that. So what this is essentially a email that I would suggest that Chris, our district manager, would send to David Leveland with a copy to Jessica Sulzer, indicating that we are hereby asking for a code enforcement inspection, and then we just let the chips fall where they may. Again, if they find that, like us, it's not in accordance, then there will be an order issued to fix it before we accept it. Or two, they do accept it with the total acknowledgement that it's not in accordance with the plans, in which case they will give us an LDO, saying that our responsibility is for what's there, not what's on the plans. And I said I could be happy either way. So the issue is, at this point in time, I'd like to take and introduce Tony's rendition in red line of a draft email that Chris would send to David Leveland requesting a code enforcement inspection of Hampton Park. And again, as I indicate on this is purely for the basis of the littorals. However, as Tony noted, he's added in there that if something else would come up, at the time I drafted this, we didn't have this second round of as-built. We got them yesterday. And so we're checking those out independently, but I think we can have those far enough along the line to know if there's going to be any other issues. But my problem with Lee County is a littoral issue. Construction-related issues of the ponds, the slopes, the dimensions and all that, that's more a South Florida issue.
So is that would you make a formal motion? Are you making the motion?
You can make the motion, but then
But then
again,
we
if
wanna
there's a
have
second-
public input.
Thank you, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman.
I remember you were echoing in.
Define good.
Yes.
So I would make that motion that we authorize Chris to send this letter as quick as possible, this email to David Leveland requesting a code enforcement inspection of Hampton Park.
I'll second.
Did anybody have a comment from in the audience? Go ahead. Please come up to the podium.
Dave Caldwell with WCI. Obviously heard the discussion. We would just like to be copied on the email, please,
Certainly.
and be party to any on-site inspection.
I don't think
I
there's a problem with that.
Totally agree
at
with
all.
that.
David, I have a draft I'll hand to you too, so you have a draft of it.
Okay, any board discussion?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Tinkle, I appreciate the work that you've done on this. And I'd like for you to acknowledge, if you will, that under the best of circumstances, this is one step of a multi-step process to get this Hampton Park Lake situation straightened out. Would you agree to that?
Bill, to me, I agree with you that the littorals are the bigger issue. We had submitted today, or yesterday afternoon, the final rendition of as-bills from Baracco. We've now got to check those to verify that everything is good. They are standing by their guns that everything that was done conforms with the original plans and specifications. As you know, we've retained a vendor to go out and spot survey selected things. If those survey dimensions and elevations, slopes come back and confirm what they have shown us on the as-bills, then that whole piece of the pie goes away, and then the only thing that's left is this littoral. So hopefully we're focusing on getting this thing resolved to accept these ponds for operation and maintenance long-term and get that off the table.
Well, I would like to see that happen, although the photographs that you sent to the board as part of our agenda, and some of these are such that if I lived in Hampton Park, I wouldn't be happy with that as a final solution. Have you talked to, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of the residents of Hampton Park. Do you think that that's going to be a satisfactory solution with them?
I think the Hampton Park people, one, want to see this thing not be placed on their lap to operate and maintain that deal going forward. I think how we do that is really kind of on our table as to what we're willing to accept. I believe that when Lee County comes out to check the littorals, they're going to be in shock. I really think they're going to be in shock. What they do about it, I really don't care. If they want to accept it as is, that's fantastic with me, because all that says is that's less that we have to do in operation and maintenance long-term. But in my opinion, if you look at the plans and you look at what's in the field, it's simply, and if you're going by the basis that what they saw 3, 4, 5, 8 years ago was they truly believe it was built in accordance with the plans, then it was faulty operation and maintenance for the last 8 years. They just let the littorals die. At this point in time, I don't care. I don't care. I just want to make sure that our position of liability relative to a possible non-compliance doesn't happen 10 minutes after we sign on the dotted line. That's my fear.
I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Jim.
Excuse me, Bill, you okay? Thank you. I guess my comment is I applaud getting a code enforcement officer involved with their power and their clout. I think that we can get this part of it cleared up. I agree that if for some reason they say, oh, the lakes are fine as they are, then absolutely we want a limited development order, because we don't want you having to go back and increase your bond issue by $2 or $3 million and increase our taxes. Secondly, the next step, South Florida Water Management. Absolutely, the construction of the lakes is every bit as big of an issue as the littorals are. Behind my home, it's supposed to be 4 to 1. You go out 4 feet behind my home and the water is up to my neck, and I'm 6'2". It's not built right, so that has to be addressed. Limited development order is a good idea. Our performance bond is another good idea to think about. I guess the last question I have, the Hampton Park residents have been kept well informed by Mr. Tinkle. We have a stormwater management committee of 5 individuals that have worked very hard to understand what the issues are and then communicate with Ed. One of our biggest concerns is if Hampton Park ends up being the direction that Lennar decides, that they're hell-bent on giving us the lakes because you all won't do what they want, what are the hurdles that must be accomplished for those lakes and those associated assets what are the hurdles that are required to turn the lakes over to Hampton Park? Is it just South Florida Water Management? If it is, they've already told us, oh, no big problem to have an HOA manage lakes. Are there other hurdles that are required besides South Florida Water Management District? Thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Did anybody else have any other comments? Go ahead, Bill. I know I interrupted you. Sorry.
This is a Rubik's Cube if I've ever seen one, and I'm just terribly afraid that even if we get the solution you're looking for from Lee County, and then maybe even from South Florida, that it's going to be unsatisfactory to the residents of Hampton Park, and then I don't think we've done them a favor.
I'm of the opinion of the town hall meetings I've been to and dealing with the pond committee that we are on the right course of action in their benefit. And the reason I believe that is because it results in the turnover of the operation and maintenance responsibilities of all the ponds and wetlands in Hampton Park to where it belongs, and that's here, not at their HOA. Right now, those people have, in a budget, and realize that's the key word, a budget, $50-some thousand for operation and maintenance of ponds and wetlands. In the event of not a solution to this problem, those people are getting double taxed. We're charging them for pond maintenance, and they're paying twice. That's not right. That's not right. I believe that this code enforcement deal will resolve this issue once and for all on the littorals. And the as-built, hopefully, that they provided now will match up with our own vendors' elevations such that we can put that to rest. What Jim just talked about is one of my very concerns, and that's a slope issue. If they're 4-to-1 and you go out 4 feet, it should be at his mid-calves, not his chest, which questions the issue of the 4-to-1. But we'll know that when we get our surveyor's deal, because one of the points that they checked was Jim's backyard.
Well, again,
I understand your point.
I appreciate
I
what
understand.
you've done, but I don't want anybody to think that even if we get an okay from Lee County, that this is over, because it's not.
There is a second part.
So we do, any other comments? I'll ask that first. Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second to have Chris Shoemaker send this email. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Now I'm going to move back to the agenda. 3A, engineer, district engineer.
Good afternoon. For the record, Danny Nelson, the Tetra Tech district engineer. We did not have anything on the agenda, but I did email out 3 task authorizations for consideration. And the reason why I sent these out, they did not make it onto the agenda. But seeing how it looks like the second meeting in December will be canceled, I didn't want these to wait. So I do have copies if we like, and we can go, we could just pass. We can go one by one if you'd like. This is the first, which is the revision to the stormwater facilities plan. One of the meetings, I believe in October, we had brought this before the board, and the board's direction was to bring this back, adding in the littorals and aeration. And in addition to that, to assist with the aeration, we've added in the cost to do bathymetric surveying for those phase 2 lakes, as well as cross-sectional surveys. So basically, bottom line, the price went from $29,000 and some change up to nearly $120,000. And that primary reason being because of the surveying effort. What that surveying will do is, one, it will allow us to estimate the aeration for the purpose of the facilities plan, but 2, the cross-section data as well can be used for the design once you move forward with design. What that also does is this is reimbursable through the SRF with the part of their design, so for your consideration.
Madam Chairman, I make the motion that we approve the task for the facility plan Phase 2 to be inclusive of the various items to identify littoral placement and aeration facilities, including surveying and the bathymetric studies. While we can move that down the road or kick the can down the road, we're doing nothing but guessing, and I wish Bob Geppert hadn't left, because I was going to ask him. They're doing all the ponds over Bill, over at your place, and you don't do this work without bathymetrics. Their ponds over there are a lot younger than ours, so their chances of having a discrepancy between what was built and what's there now because of sedimentation and other things is minimal compared to ours. Our main flowway is 32 years old. I have no clue of what's in our flowway, or for that matter, any of the other ponds, so I want to proceed with it as is, and the big deal is that this is being funded by the SRF, and it avoids us taking cash out of our reserves to finance it.
And if I can add to, we did see multiple prices for the bathymetric and the surveying, and this was the lowest price as well, so if that helps.
Is this the same company that had done the bathymetrics previously?
No, we did not seek
Okay.
pricing from them.
Okay, thank you.
Madam
Go
Ma'am,
ahead.
Danny, on pages A6 and 7 in this, I'm looking to find something that says bathymetric, and I don't see that word anywhere.
It is under the surveying, task number 3, the surveying and aeration alternative. It's part of that cost, that's $66,220.
Thank you.
Mario, do you need a motion for discussion purpose?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
I thought
yes.
you had made the motion.
You did.
I thought I did, but I
But,
didn't hear a second, so.
Sorry about that.
I'll
Is there-
second for discussion.
Okay. Are you finished,
I'm finished.
Mrs. Flaherty?
Are we putting this on the agenda? Because it is not an agenda item.
If you are, then you need to again ask any members of the audience if they wish to comment on it. And any of the task authorizations that Danny is going to be bringing forward.
Right. 2 more.
Yeah, I would,
Thank you.
yeah,
I've
I
seen
would
the-
entertain that.
I've seen
We've
the-
seen it before.
We've seen them before, they
Yeah.
were in the agenda for today, why is it not?
This is a follow-up.
They weren't in today's agenda, though. They were in the
No, they were
past
sent.
agenda. They're not on today's technically.
This item was in past, but none of these are in the current. But this is the only one that's been before the board previously.
Okay. So, I mean,
Are you presenting other
I
task
have
items?
two, I have
Okay.
2 others.
Should we
You
make
may
a
want to do them all.
motion to?
On the
there's a
fear,
motion
on the
floor.
fear that one might get passed and another one not,
We
do
should
them
open
one at a
all-
time.
You want to do them one at a time?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
okay.
That's
Or-
appropriate, Madam Chair, if you wish to open the floor to anybody to sign up and speak on it.
I have a question.
If you could, unfortunately, have to name and, for the record.
That'll be to you, Danny. Judy Peak, Eagle Point Circle. Is our bathymetrics that we had previously did, are they still relevant? Or is this just for those that's going to?
Well, these are for the phase 2 and,
Will ours have
politely
to be
saying,
redid?
uh,
I'm trying to save money.
at the point that those would be done, I need to go back and look to see, but I don't believe any of those are part of this. If they were, they would not be resurveyed. However, and when the bathymetric was done previously, bathymetrics were then checked by a second vendor, and the bathymetrics that we had, we don't necessarily feel comfortable or confident with the
So
data.
there will be have to be.
Possibly.
To answer that question, got that original bathymetrics. It was ponds 60, 62, 63, 90, 114, 121, and 126. And looking at the list of the facility plan ponds, that's none of those. I think, to answer your question, some of the ponds for which we had bathymetrics, we anticipated being a Phase 1 ponds, and I believe some of these are in the next 8 design. The problem is, we haven't got an approval of those 8 from the facility plan, from the SRF program, to use their money to pay for it. So we have to figure out how to get around that obstacle. This is for future projects.
Okay. My second question is, will all the aeration be done at one time, or will those people come back and forth?
Well, again, this is just for planning purposes, so the board has not approved to move forward with any of the aeration. This just gives the board the ability to seek funds for when they do decide, if they decide to move forward with it.
Okay.
And Danny, the price for this, we can apply this to SRF, but we would still have to, that's a reimbursement through SRF?
Yeah, you'd still have to pay that back.
So we have to pay it. Now,
Yeah.
is this 2018, a 2018 funding request, or would this fall under 2017?
It would be under the 18.
18, yeah.
So we wouldn't start this work until 2018?
Right.
Okay,
And
so.
we wouldn't be starting it the
All right,
next.
so we don't have,
We're in fiscal year 18.
Well, he's meaning calendar year.
yeah, calendar year.
A request would go before the state through the SRF, and as soon as they would approve that, then you would.
Yeah, well, I'm not worried about the reimbursement. I'm trying to think for budgeting purposes.
The critical thing about doing this and doing this timing is that we're proceeding or heading into the time of the year that this is the time to be doing this work when we can see it, because the water levels have dropped back down. And we can see it, so the timing is working great. The unfortunate thing is, once you get it done, you gotta wait till the next year to fix it. So it throws this thing helter-skelter on a timing, but it is what it is. We can only work 6 months of the year.
I think
My
to
my
answer
question
your-
was just purely from a budgeting perspective. Even though it'll be reimbursed, we have to come out of pocket with the expense. Have we,
Yeah.
where would this additional monies come from? Is that we're going to approve and then figure it out?
I think timing wise.
Now, that's the way the government works. Here comes
Now you
Thank you.
understand.
It only took me a year and a half.
Yeah.
I think timing wise, you'd be looking at, 4 or 5 months that the work would take to do. You would, after that is when you'd make your request to DEP. So just to give you an idea of when you would likely be making your request to DEP, could be in that June, July timeframe. So it still would be in this fiscal year. However, they're set, with the work that we've done already, I don't know why you couldn't postpone your request, for the fund. However, now those dollars are on you until you seek the reimbursement.
Right, and I was just wondering, making sure if we come out of pocket in 2018, we would get reimbursement in 2018, so it would be washed, even though we still have to allocate the dollars coming out. Without
No, I
our
don't.
calendar year.
I'm not worried about that
Okay.
one.
All right.
Matter of timing.
Well, you've opened a very good question here.
I didn't mean to.
Well, please bear with me. My knowledge of what gets reimbursed and what doesn't get reimbursed is now a few years old, but to go ahead and approve something and move toward contracting, et cetera, and expect the SRF to reimburse for it later on can be very delicate. Have we completed our request for our second group of pond work?
Through the SRF process?
Yes.
I believe that part's completed.
That was November, right?
Yes.
Wasn't that when the hearing was?
Yes. So this, as far as this goes, and if it makes the board feel more comfortable, you could approve this contingent upon discussions with DEP. However, this is a refundable or a reimbursable item. Now, in the past, and I'm not sure about in Ohio, but in Florida, in the past, design projects were not reimbursed. Now they are. The design portion of it were not, only construction side. And if design was, it had to be combined with the construction, like a design build. within the last 3, 4, 5 years, they've actually separated that out, and they do allow reimbursement. The question that I would ask of DEP is just timing-wise, there's no issue with you approving this from the standpoint of SRF. The question I would ask of them is, do they need to approve it before you would move forward with us, spending any dollars? And if you made a motion, that might be the modification to.
I'd make the modification to do that.
Did have one point for the board. I mean, to go to Mr. Banks's question, I guess the board also needs to realize with regards to, budgeting and available funds, for the storm, we've spent, we're probably $250,000 in that wasn't budgeted, that we're having also to take from somewhere. So this additional almost $120,000, and maybe it is a discussion to have with Stephen as to, where this comes from before we.
Are you talking about Irma?
Yes, sir. We've spent $250,000 that we didn't have budgeted.
Well, we also know that we have, as I recall, about $800,000 sitting in a fund that isn't going to get spent right now, at least quickly, relative to the building. So if we had to, we could transfer funds.
Oh, the Girl Scout building.
Girl Scout, yeah. Because we're not going to make a decision that would lead to a construction on that anytime fast.
Mike, you listening to this?
Just pretend like you're in OMB in Washington.
Congratulations.
So I would make then the modification to the motion that we let Danny go on ahead, verify with facilities planning SRF people, answer the question about the access to the SRF money.
Does
I
the
agree to that,
seconder
sir.
agree to that?
I agree to that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Anybody out there? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, the second one.
And before you get started, Danny, Tony, were you saying that we need to?
Open the floor for all these items, yeah?
Yeah, okay.
For each one, you want me to go
You already
ahead
did
and
that.
tell what it is, then you can make.
Which one is this one?
Okay, this is the fifth amended engineer's report for the 2003 project Pelican Preserve. This was at the last board meeting. This was discussed. Essentially, what we're working to do is to close out that bond, and this allows us to do the fifth and final, hopefully, engineer's report to be able to do that. So this is.
Would this basically be considered a final engineering report for
Yes.
this aspect of Pelican Preserve?
Yes, so it would be a. Sorry, I do see the misspelling.
Fifth.
Fifth. I can correct that.
It's in English.
The stutter.
Motion to approve.
Also,
gotta-
you can ask if there's any comments from any members of the audience on
I'm
that.
going to get the second.
Okay, after you get the second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any comments from the audience on this? Anybody? Nope. Okay. Any comments from the board on this? Questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Okay, the third is, this is for the storm pipe cleaning. This is for developing the bid documents of Gateway Greens. This was also discussed at the last board, just again, using those video inspections and related items to prepare bid documents for continued storm cleaning. So we had done this previously, and this is just another, step in that process.
Bring everybody up to speed on that. I have taken and finished the evaluation of all the Morris Riley tapes from 3-4 years ago for Gateway Greens. This is the one that we preliminarily budgeted $165,000 in this year's budget to do, in essence, what was done at Stony Brook and Silver Lakes, going in and cleaning out these storm sewers that had in excess of 20% blockage. I have finished a complete countdown of the number of manholes to enter for, or inlets to enter for cleaning, and there were in excess of 300. And right now, I've got about 400 manhole-to-manhole sections, unbelievable number, that shows you the age of 31 years. 400 manhole-to-manhole sections of various sizes from 15-inch all the way up to 60-inch, I believe, maybe 172, that are in excess of 20% blockage. And so there is a very good chance that the extent of the work to be done on this will have to be phased, that will go over the budget.
That's what I
But
was gonna ask you.
at least we get it out and then we know.
Is
It eliminates the question of what you have to budget the next year if we have the bids in hand.
And with the phasing, are you gonna go with pipe size, or are you gonna go by section?
I'm going to let Danny and the vendors tell us, because you guys
Just
did that
best.
too,
Mhm.
and why reinvent the wheel? If we have experience on doing the big ones first, then do the smaller. My deal from an engineering perspective is I'd much rather do the ones that are the upstream and move the flow downstream instead of cleaning the ones downstream and then go upstream and have the debris reclog the ones you just cleaned. So from an engineering perspective, I'd rather start at the top and work down, but I'm open to that discussion. But I'd make the motion to approve this. This is work that we need to be doing when that water levels drop. I've talked to a couple of vendors on it, and boy, they're chomping at the bit that the minute the water level drops to get in and start this, especially the cleaning of the basins like Bill, you've got over there in your neck of the woods. Cleaning these storm basins, when that water level drops, you want to do it, because right now, all you're doing is pumping one heck of a lot of water.
And this is a continual process from neighborhood to neighborhood.
We're going to be doing this
forever.
throughout all of Gateway. Yep.
It's something you should have
And
been
then
doing.
just
We
start
should have been
over
doing
again.
for the
Yeah.
last 25 years.
Yes, exactly.
So I'd make the motion to authorize this work.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll open it up for any comments from the floor. Okay. Any comments from the board or questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, so I have nothing other on the agenda, but we did have a meeting we have our quarterly meetings that we hold with the Water Management District, so Mike Tisch and I went to that this past Tuesday, so it was this week. So I just wanted to, report on that. We really just talked about the lake bank restoration, Irma, and, some of the items to come from Irma, including one of the items that was discussed at the last board meeting as well, and I'll bring that back at the first meeting in January, is another scope that the board had asked to prepare for analyzing the culverts at both Tree Line and I-75. So we talked about that. We also talked about Lee County is presently doing an evaluation of the system, basically the 10-mile canal system. So we'll be monitoring that and see if there's anything that comes of their report and study. So they're doing the report and study specifically on the impacts from Irma. The other item to come out of that meeting, we should be seeing, or we as Gateway should be seeing a letter. They said this week, likely we believe it'd be tomorrow, and this is going back to all of those 100 and something permit applications that have been sitting out there, some of them for 30 years. And as you know, we've worked towards closing out some of the lower hanging fruit. This letter will focus on those that have been certified and simply need to be transferred to the operating phase. It's about 60, I think it's 60, 66, somewhere in there, permits that have been certified. So the work's been done. It's been certified by an engineering firm and needs to be transferred to the operating phase. Now, cautioning, and I've mentioned this caution to the Water Management District, is one or multiple of those will be Hampton Park. And we said, look, we'll look at each one of these individually, and those that we believe may be still low-hanging fruit, we can certainly bring before this board. for consideration, but I just wanted to let them know that although they have accepted the infrastructure in Hampton Park, we're still going through that evaluation and working with Lennar and their engineer. So realizing too that we are not operating and maintaining that. So, but as I said, we're working together with the developer and the engineer, and I believe yesterday they actually dropped off a package for review. So hopefully we'll be able to get there fairly soon. So anyhow, that's the only other item that I have.
Margaret, a couple questions. Danny, in the past, one of the issues that we have ran into here, and this goes back years, is that the engineers that were doing these projects died or dissolved, went bankrupt, flew the coop, whatever. How are we going to get around, and I imagine, Tony, this might be more yours than Danny's, how are we going to get around the legal problem of getting somebody to certify this?
Well, I mean, the good news is at this point, we're only focusing on those that have been certified. So those would be the ones that are not.
Sorry, I
And
missed that
and Mike
part.
did bring that up to the Water Management District. We had a good discussion about that, and we've been very vocal to the board and the Water Management District in the past that we, as your district engineer, would not be comfortable going, and I wouldn't know of an engineer that would be comfortable going out without spending likely hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and reevaluate the system and certify it.
Some 95-year-old engineer ready to die
Who doesn't
wants to
care
leave
about
some
his,
money to an estate, let
right.
him sign them.
Who doesn't care about his license, but I think that,
What part of 95 did you not understand?
Okay, 94.
And we could certainly, those will be out there for quite some time.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
we'll,
yeah, and just, other districts I represent have had that same issue, and I can't recall how they addressed it, like in Pelican Marsh. They addressed it a couple of years ago, and I'll try to find out again how they handled that with some of the,
well,
because the engineer who did that certification did pass away, even though he was younger. He was a younger guy.
Well, one point to make is that a lot of this system is 30 years old, and some of those are probably 20, 25 years old, and we have been operating and maintaining that system. So one of the points that Mike made to them was maybe there's some common ground there that just skip the certification phase and just let the Water Management District transfer them to the operating phase if we're operating and maintaining them already. Because I couldn't recommend to this board that you go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay some engineering firm to do that. And so I don't know where, you're gonna be stuck between a rock and a hard
You may
place.
want to call Dave Robinson, give him a holler.
He's not quite 95 yet either. But
No, but he had conversations involving some other districts.
Okay.
The other two questions I had is we've received a notice that we've got the approval for the Phase 1 remaining 8 ponds. Where are we at on advertising for bids?
We
We've got to get
have-
those advertisements out.
Yeah, I'm thinking that probably after the first of the year we'll be about there. We, when we met with Mike, one of the items that we took away from that and we priced was doing bathymetric surveying, and I'm now saying don't do that. I don't think it would do us a whole lot of good to do bathymetric surveying. It would just delay the time.
We don't have a funding source for it, so it'll just have to be done later.
Right.
Then-
So we're working on
So-
those final,
So
those
we're
final
going on that.
corrections.
The other one, and I got this by a resident, Pond 106, the infamous old 106, was the experimental pond that we did, the very first, and we had a proposal from a vendor to fix that, and we got caught with the rain, and it's now receding, and we still have the problem. I believe we have a proposal on hand, on record. Does anybody know where we're at on getting that work authorized so that when the water levels get down, we can, in fact, the water levels don't even have to go down. 106, we can go out there and pump it down and isolate it very easily. But when that water drops, those residents are going to be in here, when are you going to fix this pond? So yeah, everybody remembers that's one of the ponds that we were experimented with without the stone, and it fell apart.
Yeah, I don't have any information.
Literally fell apart. So we need to have something we've got a proposal. We need to pull that out, dust it off, see if the vendor's still willing to do it, and if so, I don't know why we don't go ahead and issue that fix.
Staff will look into that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
So unless anybody has anything else, that's all I've got.
Merry Christmas.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Well, don't let them off the hook.
District Council.
Yes. If I may, agenda item 3BI is the first one, and heard Ms. Brewer's presentation and comments, and I guess a couple of comments in response to that. The panacea for all conveyances, everyone says, get title insurance. If you read your title insurance policy, you'll say, we will cover the following, and then they list exceptions. And listed, if I recall, I didn't bring the entire file with me because it's voluminous. The exceptions for these roadway segments list covenants, easements, restrictions of record, and they reference those. In my detailed report I did way back when, I listed those sections, and the covenants, declarations of covenants were probably about 4.5 inches thick that I reviewed with regards to the roadway segments. The concerns I have as to those roadway segments emanate from and are created by the deed restrictions that encumber those roadways. So when the facile statement is made, gee, you have title insurance protects you except for the exceptions. It's like your homeowner's coverage. It says we will cover your house against casualty loss except for the following 28 pages of stuff. And when you have title insurance, it says we will cover you and give you value and protect you and defend you in litigation except for the exceptions. And in this instance, the exceptions were, some of the exceptions included deed restrictions, and that's what generated the issues for these roadway segments. With regards to the remaining roadway segments and the issues that I have, as to dissolved corporations, a process could be undertaken by WCI similar to the process outlined in my next memo on dissolved entities, where they can, an application can be made to the circuit court to appoint a trustee for the property, and then have the trustee convey the property. There's a statutory scheme for that, and I've outlined that in my memo involving the roads. And so they don't have to reinstate, in my opinion, they may not have to reinstate the entity. In addition, they say that, gee, it's remote, Tony's looking for the boogeyman. Yeah, and you know, I've seen the boogeyman jump out and bite people, and it costs money. And I'm not in a position to recommend the board say, you know what, the boogeyman's hiding, and so he'll come out 20 years from now, and those folks will have to pay the piper at that time. And with all due respect to Rhonda in that regard, and all the property owners in an area covered by a set of deed restrictions can enforce the deed restrictions arguably. It's a contract among all those individuals. So even if they say, you know, don't worry, that entity that was the association doesn't exist, so they're not going to come after you, somebody in that association, somebody in that area, that subdivision covered by those covenants could initiate an action. And so, again, the board has the ultimate decision whether or not to decide to accept these or not. I still think they need to address the issues. And again, I think they can, and again, with regards to the same comment I made as to the dissolved property owners associations for those commercial areas, to try to blame this district for requiring stricter proof of title when the entities that established those corporations allowed them to become dissolved, or those property owners allowed it to become dissolved, I'm not sure how that's our fault. And that's what it's, they're trying to toss it back and say it's our fault. And again, the Girl Scout lane, again, you know, I've made all my comments with regards to this, and I think we're almost there. And it's unfortunate that we're not totally there, but.
Questions? Can we bring Rhonda back up?
Yes.
I've got some questions that's going to be involving her. I've read all this stuff that Tony's got. I mean, that was a plethora of
Rhonda.
documents. Thanks, Rhonda. And I see this as I read it, from the engineering perspective, we've got three distinct issues. Issue one is the Girl Scouts a little bit different in that has to do with an ongoing issue that we can't get consent from a property owners association, a homeowners association. And in my opinion is, two can play that game. And it's unfortunate to have to say this, if they don't want to work with us, turn it over to the Pinecrest property owners. If they want that road that bad, turn it over to them. The issue is that Tony brought up, Rhonda, to what extent or difficulty is that going to the court and simply getting that, what it sounds like, an appointment of a person, a warm body, to sign off and do what these guys that, I've tried to call a couple of them, they won't even return my phone call. They don't want to sign off on these documents. I don't blame them. They don't know what the heck they're getting into. So how difficult is it for you all to contact the court and have an appointment of what Tony said for those other 3 or 4 that would solve that problem real quick?
Well, what you're referring to specifically, as I understand it, would be West Lakes and Commerce Lakes Drive, and then Devonshire Drive.
I know the first 2. I don't know is the third one in that ballpark?
Yes.
Third
Yeah,
one is
it's
in
item
there.
one and-
Is that my
1 and 3.
interpretation is correct? So, I'm not familiar with that process.
And that's why I asked. I don't know what it is.
And again, if you guys needed anything if you needed to do anything on these 2 roadways, you don't have any current needs for anything right now. So from our perspective, it's going through additional hoops to satisfy something that is so completely remote that I don't know, if you wanted to do something, you would be able to do it. If they had a problem with it, they would have to come back and reinstate and then take issue. And number one, you don't have a current need for anything right now on those 2 roadways, whether it be signage or I think another example was antennas. There hasn't been a need in 20-some years. There isn't any current need right now. So I don't see why we have to go and try and hunt out these, what I consider are very remote, unlikely, low risk, low exposure to you.
One solution would be to ask the underwriter in which the title insurance policy is being written to delete the exceptions that are causing the problem.
That's an option.
And I doubt that they would do that, but you can ask them.
Well-
Rhonda, there's another deal.
Delete those
that
exceptions.
If we're going to talk about this issue.
Because I'm not an attorney, but I just wanted to, the company issuing the title insurance didn't require what you were asking for.
That's correct. So the request is to ask the underwriter for authorization to delete the exceptions that are causing the difficulty. If you really truly want to give
We
us.
could do that, try that. But my question is that we're dealing with 6, and we've known all along that there are, in fact, 7. Rhonda, David, do you all own Fairway Lakes Office Park to where we're going to be going down this again? Do you currently own Fairway Lakes Office Park?
We own the road right away.
Okay, so that one's going to be in line, and my thought is that, are we going to go, because that POA is dissolved also. Is there any reason that we don't add
I'm sorry, what road were you saying?
Fairway
Fairway
Lakes
Lakes.
Office Park?
No, I'm sorry, we don't own that.
You do not?
Do you want to own it?
I have Westlink in my.
I'm sorry, who owns Fairway Lakes Office Park?
The association.
The dissolved entity, the dissolved corporation.
But who does it go back to?
It doesn't go back to anyone. It's still in their name.
So that one's even further out on orbit than the rest of these.
No, they can do the same thing. Again, the whole idea about applying to the court
Okay,
for
but
trustee.
the ball's not there, because these other, you guys got an interest in it. That one you don't. Okay, that's all I ask.
Madam Chairman, please.
Just I'd like to accept these roads.
We spent over an hour on this thing, the last meeting, and here we go again. And I don't know how many dollars we've spent of paying Tony to do all of this stuff. And for the life of me, I can't understand what the significance of this is. If it's been laying around dormant, why are we opening this can for no particular reason?
The can of the title insurance?
No, the can of the whole blasted thing. Everything was nice until you got us all going on this thing.
I think
It's just
like home,
I get money for everything.
I know you.
It was going along great.
Well, we got to deal with Tony to pay him a lot of money.
But
You can tell me and I'll understand, but God, there's just a lot of,
Bill, if
it's a
you-
lot of baloney for nothing.
Bill, if you will make the
I
motion.
agree.
I will second it to take these over in opposition to the advice of our counsel.
I mean, I think what it boils down to is kind of managing risk, and
That's what it is.
Tony is identifying the potential risks that's out there
Yeah.
versus the level of effort that it's going to take to even further reduce the risk. So
He's doing his job. He's telling us
right,
that
Tony's
there's
doing
a
his
risk.
job. We
Let me
determine-
tell you where I learned how to do my real estate transactional work in detail and reading abstracts. Was when I was in-house at Westinghouse, Community of Naples and Pelican, when David Caldwell was there between 83 and 86. So the nitpicking began back then.
So ultimately,
Went in jail.
So
It's all that
one more thing
Westinghouse.
before we panic. So what we need to determine is how much risk we are willing to assume versus the level of effort that it may continue to take to close this out.
And I think there is a different level of risk on 5 of those than there is on 1. Girl Scout Lane has got some issues.
We're not gonna take the Girl Scout.
Yeah,
We're gonna skip
yeah.
that.
But if somebody would make the motion with the knowledge and the advice of counsel of his recommendations to us, somebody makes the motion to proceed, I'll second it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Kathleen,
second it.
Everything except Girl Scout?
Everything that's Girl Scout.
Everything but Girl Scout,
Yes.
right? The other 5,
Yes.
Mrs. Flaherty.
I do have a problem accepting them because we do not know what goes on in the future. And we're not going to be here 50 years from now and something could happen. And we don't have that deed or the title. And I am concerned about that. So we're not really doing our job by accepting them if we don't have complete control. So that's my opinion.
We won't make Tinkle happy if we don't do something. Been spending 2 hours on this stuff.
He'll be 95 at that time.
Glad we have a
And I-
barometer.
And I appreciate what
You'll be
you're
the
saying. I
95-year-old
think the
engineer.
issue is here, we're dealing with entities that just don't exist.
Don't exist.
There's nobody to go to say,
Unless Lazarus arises.
yeah.
And these guys did spend one heck of a lot of money doing all of this stuff, and the roads look great. Everything looks great.
And 137,000 in upgraded posts, please.
And 130.
Say that again.
Would you like to sweeten the pot?
137,000.
In
And we
upgraded
upgraded, instead of having the DOT signs, we went with the decorative posts at your request.
Thank
Please,
you.
thank
And
you.
we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Flaherty.
But there is a way to go. We go to the court to get the requirements. So, I mean, we're not just,
So we all spend a lot more on legal fees.
well, then it's legal.
Call the motion.
Call the question.
Let's see, you made the motion, we're accepting the 5 streets with the exception of Girl Scout Lane, and
Mr. Tinkle seconded it.
Mr. Tinkle seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
4 to 1.
Thank you.
I would say that along the same line, though, we've got part of the problem solved, but we still have Fairway Lakes Office Park, and
Yada, yada, yada,
but
yada.
for Tony, though, and for everybody here, there is another issue that's tied to this. And ask Tony, because I'm getting hit with it, because people love to call me for some reason.
I can understand
POAs,
why.
we've got a building, we got 2 buildings being built over there. And as best as all the residents can see, and as I can see, these people are gonna put shingles on those 2 buildings, not tile. Who enforces covenants? And are there covenants?
The district does not.
I knew the district did, I knew that one
You
was.
can ask Mr. Caldwell and Ms. Brewer.
I'm getting hit by why is the
Mr. Caldwell?
CDD allowing this to happen? And my first deal was, I said the same thing, because we haven't got a dog in that fight.
Right.
But they want
There's
better,
no allowing
they
it.
want
We don't
they
have
want an
say.
answer. Who does do it in that case of a dissolved POA?
Dave Caldwell with WCI. Let me suggest, I don't have with certainty, but here's the way the process normally would work. Obviously, the CDD doesn't have zoning issues, and you don't get involved with, the colors of buildings or the materials, because you're not allowed to. When WCI, old WCI, decades ago, when we would sell a property to an owner in Fairway Lakes or any of those other communities, it was sold with a specific set of declarations related to that. So it would be old WCI to ABC Company, a deed with a set of restrictive covenants. So that's something to look to. It may say, in fact, in those documents, if you can find them, what the general requirements would be.
Who enforces those, David, in the absence of the POA?
I'll come to that in a moment. The other thing is, in associations such as Fairway Lakes Office Park, There's another set of declarations that typically does set out some standards, but not necessarily architectural. It usually leaves it to the association to make that determination, but you've already come to the understanding that Fairway Lakes Office Park is now dissolved. So there is no association to enforce that component. Going back to the original landowner, Old WCI, selling land to a party, ABC company, who may be building an office building, they would have a requirement to submit plans to Old WCI, get their approval, and then go build their building. Old WCI does not exist. You know, that's who sold the property to them. And they maybe have resold it to a second, third, or fourth time, and they don't realize that there could have been a responsibility. So there's really as time goes by, there's no one to really enforce that declaration. New WCI cannot enforce the declaration that old WCI has on the property because those were not brought forward for our enforcement provisions.
I suggested to two of the people who are.
So it all reverts back to whatever the county allows.
Okay,
That's
I
what ends up
suggested to
happening.
two of the people that contacted me that are owners over there, recreate the POA.
Yeah, they can.
Recreate the POA and solve your problems if you don't like what's going on.
We'd like for them to do that.
I'd love to have them do it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Yeah.
I just have one more, just a follow-up to Rhonda in regards to the title exclusion.
Exceptions, yeah.
The exceptions. Is that still actionable at this point?
The board's vote did not include that.
Did not include that.
No, they do need to revise their title commitment and also some of the revised deeds to look at to make sure that
Correct.
everything's okay. But that was not part of the board's action.
But it would be acceptable to make that request to Rhonda to see if they would.
We can ask the underwriter.
Would ask without.
I think Tony sort of answered the question and said he'd be surprised if they did remove it.
Yeah. So if you
From
would,
his
okay.
experience with working with those kind of things.
Great.
But it's not a condition of approval that we will allow.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. That's all I had.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for the gifts, Rhonda.
Tony, you still going?
Yes, sir, I'm on the
Okay, I've got
next,
more
my next
stuff.
roadway segment is the roadway tracks in Town Lakes Office Park, Fairway Lakes Office Park.
Haven't we all really done this?
I think we sort of touched on it tangentially, and again, they can either reestablish themselves, you reinstate the corporation, or one of the officers, directors at the time of dissolution could sign the deed, or any of the property owners in any of those areas, I think, could apply to the circuit court for appointing a trustee for the roadway tracks to have that deeded to the district.
Well, there's a complicating factor on Town Lakes. We've already taken it over, but we're billing them separately.
We haven't taken title to it.
Right.
We're engaging in some maintenance activities, but we've not taken title to the road.
Well, hear me out where I'm wanting to go. Should we give them, I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We should give them the same opportunity that we just did on these other ones to come in, and should they want to give us title, we treat that. Now, they have to bring the roads up to standard, but we give them the opportunity to get out from underneath that extra burden of taxation that we put on them every year.
Yeah, the little difference and difficulty is.
That's a little different,
Yeah,
yes.
is that in this instance, the title commitment indicated that the fee owner at the present time was WCI, and then listed all the exceptions, which indicated other parties may have had an interest in the roadway. The unknown question is, what would the title commitment have here? But you're right,
My
it's
only thing
worthwhile
is,
giving them a
It's
chance.
worth giving them a chance.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Next.
So I guess the question would be, who would contact those?
I would be willing to give Vince Sardo a call.
And
I know
again-
Vince
and
very
again,
well.
Vince could, as
He's
a-
one of the owners.
As an officer at the time of dissolution, could sign the quitclaim deed.
I
If
think
they get
that's
the title
fair.
insurance and if they all, you know.
For the people that are watching this and maybe in the audience, this is different than anything else we have, like in HOAs where the roads are private or gated. These are all have access to the public for essentially commercial establishment or commercial purpose. About the only exception I can think of is the one that goes back to the fun park. In that case, it's for the whole community. But every one of them have benefits to the whole community as opposed to, let's say, a residential street like in mine or Stony Brook or any of the other communities where it's purely for the benefit of the residents. That's the difference between these.
Well, these are purely for the benefit of the businesses that are in there that generate the traffic on
That's
them,
correct.
correct?
That's
So
correct.
why wouldn't those be considered the same way that they would have additional monies to pay for those roads?
Because some of them are through roads. They're necessary to get from A to B. About the only one that isn't would be the one that's looped, which would be either Fairway Lakes or town lakes. The other ones are all, people use the roads to get to Daniels, use West Links and/or Commonwealth Drive.
But, and we're talking about Fairway Links and Town Lakes Office Park, so.
Those are a little different, but
Right, I mean, we have that fund for Town Lakes, so.
yeah, the real issue.
That's who's paying for the maintenance of the roads for their benefit.
The real issue is, if we get down to it, is we should have stepped in when we started hearing about this disillusionment 5, 6, 10 years ago and stopped it in its tracks and told them we're not going to allow that to happen. But that's water over the dam. That's before I got here.
So those will come back.
Yeah.
A couple other items, one sort of like a walk-on item for discussion. I apologize. It's part of the gift-giving season, so I decided to put this on the agenda request. I know the chairman will give me, define good, Madam Chairman. This isn't in the definition of good, I guess, no. It's just a general informational issue with regards to consideration of possible board discussion and possible direction as to dissemination of information concerning the interim use by the golf carts of the 4-foot travel lane in Pelican Preserve. And I guess part of this is self-explanatory, hopefully, that the issue with regard, the chevrons were removed about a year ago. And there've been, the traffic study was performed by Johnson Engineering. PPAC and the work group had provided the recommendations. I reviewed those and I've provided some comments back. I was more delayed than I should have been, and that's my fault in getting back to Mr. Measy, and he and I need to get together on the latest iteration of my memorandum on those. But I think in the meantime, it might be helpful to avoid confusion, to have some guidance provided and information disseminated to the Pelican Reserve residents. Folks are coming back, we have new people. So that's just a board consideration that since the chevrons have been removed from the quote-unquote undesignated 4-foot shoulder, and to my knowledge, this requirement that's outlined in that letter attached as Exhibit B is still out there from the city of Fort Myers. That was a condition of the DO from the city for Pelican Reserve Boulevard or Sun City Boulevard. The board may want to discuss and consider whether or not to provide direction to the staff, Pelican Reserve Community Association, PPAC, and the Safety and Security Work Group to send out a community-wide notice or update to the residents with regards to utilizing this 4-foot travel lane.
Bill, how would you do it? You live there.
Thank you. Tony did a marvelous job there. And I don't want to bore you with all of the history on this thing, except that a year ago, this board, determined that those erroneously painted bicycle chevrons in that 4-foot lane should be removed, and they were. The problem is that there was no follow-up with the residents as to why they were painted in the first place and removed in the second. And while a number of residents are using their golf carts in the 4-foot lane, others are relying on the last information that they received from PPAC, or the Safety and Security, who told them to drive their golf carts in the auto truck lane. That 4-foot lane is by DO a undesignated lane, and is to be used by both bicycles and golf carts for safety purposes. Now, I don't want to make you think that Pelican Preserve is a dangerous place, but we've got a lot of new residents and a lot of snowbirds returning, have returned and are returning. And there's some fairly fast traffic going down Pelican Preserve Boulevard. Therefore, I believe that to finish up the work of this board, that we ought to direct Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee to inform our residents that that lane is
Dual
not
use.
to be, I don't want to use the word to be used. I want to use may be used by the golf carts as well as the bicycles.
Do we
And
need to do an action on that?
our question I have, and if you want to make that motion so we can
I'll make that motion.
possibly have a second
I'll second.
for discussion. My question is, are we going to see, I would like to see the traffic study that was prepared by Johnson Engineering and any of the other documents that this memorandum is working off of before we make our final determination?
I can.
Because this is an interim. This is an
interim, and I can understand what you just said. I think it's quite correct, because the Johnson report's been finished for weeks, if not months. We just haven't gotten it.
Right, and the board had requested that that be done so that we could make,
Years ago.
yeah.
Are you just wanting to confirm before we vote?
Not before the vote this tonight, because this is interim solution until we come up with a
final.
permanent plan.
So in other words, get us the background to read.
Yeah, and Madam Chairman, again, I take some blame for that not coming to you. I mean, it's there, it's a public record, you can only ask for it, but not having finalized the recommendation, my review and recommendation to PPAC and the working group. I have some comments, questions, and issues with the traffic study, quite frankly, and provided an initial draft of a memo to Mr. Measy. We met and talked about it. I did a revised draft, and I just have not yet gotten back with Mr. Measy, so that's sort of shame on me for that.
Since this is a walk-on, do we need to open this up for any discussion?
Yes.
Thank you for it, yeah, Mr. Dickon.
Any comments? Questions?
And I will expedite that, and I apologize again for,
Okay.
I've been
So-
delinquent in that.
Just for clarification before I call the vote, this is just an interim solution that you want the working group to send out a memorandum to the residents that both bicycles and golf carts may use
Yes.
that 4-foot lane.
That's correct.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Here we go.
I was over there today, and Bill, I echo your deal. Those cars are flying over there.
And as you may recall, we have a contract with the city of Fort Myers to have police in there. When they're in, it's up to them, of course.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe that returning snowbirds have not yet seen the police.
John Greger, PPAC. I'd like to make one comment. Depending on how you vote, and maybe Tony can address this, if the golf carts start using the bicycle lane again, and they do, which is fine, but if you reinstate it so that all the golf carts should start going there, you run the risk, there's a lot of bicycles in that lane. What does the golf cart do when he has to pass a bicycle?
There's this.
And if he
I'm not a
does
law
that-
I'm not a law enforcement officer, but there is the statutory requirement of giving 3 feet of clearance to a bicyclist.
Fine, so now he's gonna pull over into the traffic lane and addressing your comment, Bill, that you now have traffic moving very quickly on Pelican Preserve Boulevard? Are you causing the
Hopefully they see
potential for more an accident? At this point, we haven't had any major
There's no
accidents.
answer to this.
There's no perfect
And I don't care how the board votes, we can send out a letter, but I don't know if PPAC should be sending out that letter.
Well,
If it
we'll
wants to come from the board,
We'll find somebody to send it out.
that's fine if you vote that way.
We've
But where's the
already,
legal responsibility?
we've
I don't want it
already
coming from
voted
us.
on it. We already voted on
I
it.
think the key thing is the may,
Yeah, the may use.
the may use.
We're not
Consistent with, I think,
forcing.
and the key is consistent with historical practices, which
Yeah, it's and hopefully drivers, because we have the same thing over ours, hopefully drivers see those and give way. You know, it's just like a cop parked alongside of the road. You're supposed to be a free lane over. And sometimes there's not any room and it creates a nightmare.
Okay, I'm gonna move on
Golf
to
carts, yeah.
our reports, staff
Oh,
reports.
nothing else except that I have on my to-do list to get with Charles Mann about Area 9. I know Chris has had some good communications with the HOA involving that access area.
Oh, and also, can you get whoever it is at Worthington to give us a transfer of the deed on flowway from Stony Brook so that we can get that
Oh,
addressed?
the easement.
The
Well,
easement.
we have, I think, I believe there's that assignment, and there's an assignment of that easement. Yes, I will get that. I'll get with John Nagy.
Because we have work there to do.
I'll get with
but
John Nagy on
We
that.
don't own it at this point in time.
Yeah, I'll get with John Nagy on that. Thanks for that reminder. That was on my list, because John continually wants something from us too. Thank you.
Staff report.
Yes, ma'am, the district manager's report, Madam Chair was going to discuss the board advance dates for February. That was on the list here.
Yes. And I believe, let me look at my calendar real quick, there was time, except for the week of the 12th, when Mr. DeCerbo would not be available.
You're talking about February now?
February, yes. Mhm.
Valentine's Day is the 14th.
Yes. What about the 8th?
It's a Wednesday.
That's the Thursday.
Thursday.
That's our
Oh,
off
no.
Thursday.
Yes.
No, that's not good for me that day.
Okay.
How long is
about-
this going to last?
Probably about like the last time, you know.
All day? But what I was wondering is, could we do it in the morning of the day we have a board meeting?
Oh, I think it'd be better to dedicate a little bit more time than that. What about the 9th?
What date is that?
That's a Friday.
I'd rather keep it to Thursdays if we could. Can we go to the 22nd?
That's fine with me. What about the other board members? Thursday, the 22nd?
On Thursdays, I go out with Al and Mainscape in the morning. So you can change it? Okay, all right.
Well,
So-
if that was the conflict, was
No,
that what
there's
the
another
conflict was on the
conflict.
8th?
No, there was another.
Something else,
conflict.
okay. So let's try the 22nd.
22nd appears to be open for me.
22nd then would be okay with you,
Then it will be okay.
Mr. Guy?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do February 22nd. And he asked if we could use the facilities like we did the last time.
The club?
Yeah.
I'll check.
It's still open?
Not open, sold.
Has it been sold?
No, if it is.
Oh, okay. What time are we going to start?
Last time we started at 9.
Yeah.
Some ungodly hour?
Last time it was 9, so we'll get the particulars to you after we verify with Mr. DeCerbo.
And I'll contact them tomorrow and verify the availability of that. Good.
Okay.
And the next item, just to update you, we've had 2 meetings with FEMA to discuss reimbursement of the funds that we expended to do cleanup, fix fences, and recoup money for the staff hours used during the event. We're currently gathering data that they've requested, and we're meeting with them weekly, so we're making progress, and we've got a 60-day window to kind of close everything out with them.
Does that look promising?
I feel it does.
Because we tried it on the HOA, and we got doors slammed in our face. But it's because I think we were private, and they kind of thought, you got what you got, don't go too far.
Right.
With
This
my
is
other
for-
districts, the experience that the managers have had there is good relations and good communications with FEMA, and optimistic to get at least half of it back. With the governmental entities, they've been very cooperative, I understand.
I would say anything that we get back is a bonus.
Yeah.
We're ahead.
Fine, filters make it 50 back.
Yeah.
50%. They got 400,000.
Next item for the Public Works Manager report. Let me switch hats. One of the things I wanted to ask the board, been going back and forth about work with Mr. Prezi and the landscaping, and having some more discussions with him, because the irrigation system is in rough shape. Producing a landscaping plan that we probably wouldn't be able to irrigate very well. We kind of looked at ways to repurpose Mr. Prezi's services, and one of the things that I was looking at and had a few conversations with a few of you is looking at the monument entrances into Gateway coming off of Daniels at Gateway Boulevard. That entrance monuments are very, very old, outdated. Would the board be supportive of engaging Mr. Prezi's services to basically do a facelift on our gateway entrances? Being those at Daniels and Gateway Boulevard, Griffin and 82, and then also at Griffin, or Gateway and 82, the Stony Brook entrance.
Well, it's really 3, 4, 5. You got Gateway Boulevard, both ends. You got Griffin, then you've got Commerce Lakes, both ends. That have nothing.
Mhm.
That have absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's true, they do.
And another one, West Links, that has nothing.
Right. So would the board be supportive to, instead of looking at some landscaping options with Mr. Prezi, he's would also be available to help us, do a facelift on our
I know
entrances.
that the entrance, especially off of 82 at Griffin, that sign is so small, I don't even think anybody notices it. And the faster the traffic is going past it, that definitely, I think, should be looked at for some changes.
Would you consider waiting until 82 construction is finished before you do?
Do that one.
Well, I don't
Before you do
think-
that one.
Yeah.
I don't think we're looking to rush right out and make changes. We're just looking at a request of what changes should look like.
Design
Is that
concept.
correct? Yeah.
Right,
Thinking out
so-
loud, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Design
since
concept.
since taking this position, I've been looking at other large gated communities and looking at their monumentation signs and looking at their entrances, and ours are for the size.
Looks like 1985.
I'm trying
Look like when
to
they
be
were built.
kind.
That's when they were built.
But they need a facelift. I mean, this is a very nice community, and
Well, I was gonna save some of this for supervisor comments, but I think it segues right into it. I mean, Gateway is not just a neighborhood of homes anymore, and it hasn't been. It's been evolving for quite some time, and it's becoming more of a economic epicenter with additional homes and businesses and schools and a lot of things. So I mean, to me, I know that I've got almost 1,800 employees that ride past that sign every day that pulls into the Gardner. And for us to enhance our community with something I think represents the scale and quality of what we're trying to develop here, I think it's a great idea.
Can we get a proposal from him?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I guess the question would be, this is just design? Just going to come up with design and?
These would be concepts, and then
Okay.
after you approved
Then do the
some
design.
concepts, then we'd move into design.
Okay. And we would have the opportunity at that point, if we weren't really happy with those, we could venture out to look at someone else. We're going to give them the first shot at it, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would be in favor.
Me too.
Got the support of the board.
All right, very good. Just want to let you also know that we're doing a little, I'm doing a little realignment of pool staff. We're looking at just some staff changes here. We're going to be moving one of the other full-time employees, Pete. We're gonna take him up to the pool after the first of the year.
Pete,
Pete, yes.
how'd you figure that?
We talked to him.
I didn't say that right. Is Pete a certified lifeguard, and that's why you're gonna put him up there?
No, none of the employees are certified lifeguards. They're attendants that would assist.
You think your services would be better up there than they are where they are, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
And then some of the things also with the realignment of the staff, we might be looking at just some of the hours that we have. And I know in talking to staff, that's been a touchy subject with the board in the past, but just trying to budget staff and staff time. We're going to be looking at maybe some changes to some of the hours, but I'll bring that back to you when I have something more concrete.
So can I?
And when you bring that back, can you give us some idea of the numbers of usage during those times?
They've been keeping numbers for
Okay.
for quite some time.
Good.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
when he brings that back, would you bring back any information you have about the dollars that we're saving as a result of changing the heating system?
Yes.
The gas, yeah. That's
And that's
huge.
what they-
I bet the numbers are gonna be huge from propane.
Yeah, I have a comment.
You know, we went to natural gas.
Right.
No, I think there is an opportunity to look at that position and the duties and responsibilities of the pool attendant. They're really not pool attendants. They're an extension of administrative staff. They're not really doing much to the pool. They're not certified lifeguards. They're more administrative. So how can we better utilize? And I don't believe that the volume dictates someone to be there all day for every hour. And I know that in the past, staff, April had mentioned, and I think even Chris, adding some additional responsibilities to that administrative position. I would also look at how can we better utilize
We recycle.
that individual to also not have to stay on site for the duration. Is there a possibility where they could do some rounds, where they could go and check the different parks, especially on the weekends?
That would work out well for me if
Yeah.
I could do that.
I mean, whether we have a vehicle or one of the gators or golf carts, because you come right out the back, you can hit the fun part, you could hit the the soccer court, or get in a vehicle. It doesn't matter. But my point is, we've got a real opportunity to redefine roles and responsibilities for some of our positions to make them more efficient and productive in their roles.
Well, I appreciate productivity, but it gives me indigestion, having been an old water safety instructor who taught lifeguards, to not have somebody representing the administration at that pool all the time it's open. There's just no telling what can happen.
Well, and here's what. Look, let me add one more thing. Basically, I was able to make a car payment and other things from being a lifeguard, and I started at 14. I got my certification, and was a beach lifeguard. And if we have someone on site that isn't a lifeguard or someone that is really doing pool-related activities, maybe there is an opportunity, Bill, in the future to look at hiring. We may have some individuals here in the community that might be better served as a pool attendant for, it might be younger, that could facilitate some of those activities while we look to offset some of our, tenured staff to do more administrative, truly more impactful work. So I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying there might be different options we should look at.
And normally there's more than one pool attendant on site, correct?
They have an overlap between their shifts.
So if there's an overlap, maybe that's the time that rounds could be made to the other parks, like the fun park or whatever park it is that you're also overseeing, just to check the facilities and make sure, just an inspection type of thing.
Right.
That's.
Okay.
Margaret, do you have other things, Mike? Because I have about 4 items for Mike.
Had one last thing, just a contractor update. We were supposed to start this week with repairing the fences at the dog park, but the contractor ran into supply issues with the fencing, so we're probably another week and a half out yet before they start.
Get that
work.
fence fixed? Good. That was one of them.
Let me start with Mrs. Flaherty, if you don't mind. Go ahead.
I have a question about the soccer field. Okay, scheduling. There was a problem with scheduling, and could you update me of how we're going to alleviate such a problem in the future?
Is that the email we all got?
Yes.
Figured.
The hurricane caused problems
Okay.
with some of the leagues running longer than they normally do. We had the high school scheduled for time. They had to move some of their dates. And then we had, because of the hurricane, the GSA needed to extend their season. That wound up causing some conflicts with the other users, because we've got 4 different users wanting to use the fields at relatively the same amount of time. Normally, it's not an issue with the 3 leagues that we have. When we add the high school in, it makes things a little more difficult. They can only use 1 field, and that's one of the things I want to talk to the leagues about it, and the people that stripe the fields, to see if we could also do something with Field 4, so we'd have 2 full-size fields that would be able to be used instead of only having 1. I think that would eliminate some of the problems that we're currently having. I'm going to look at that, and also I'm going to work with the high school to set their schedule so we don't have conflicts with the other leagues. It's very hard for the school to change dates and to move. You're looking at 22 kids, buses. You have referees that are coming, parents that are coming. To trying to move them is difficult. And I'm sympathetic to the high school. I also know that try to work with one of the leagues to move some dates around, but it was difficult.
Now, does the soccer league get the high school schedule so they would know when the high school is? So if they had to change their dates?
That would also help.
Okay.
But the schools change their schedules also. So they're not set in stone as the 3 leagues that we have that go on certain nights, the schools.
So the school needs to be aware that
I have to coordinate, okay, better with the leagues and the high school.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Tinker?
Yeah, first of all, the Christmas party looked like a great success out there. Changing over, making the switch to the program that you all did, looked great, looked fantastic.
Thank you.
We had a little parking problem, but I guess everybody got in. Next item is hurricane debris removal. West Links still, and parts of Commerce Lake still has stuff piled with yellow spray paint on it. Does anybody have any idea of when FEMA's coming back to pick all that stuff up?
Staff was looking at the Lee County's debris removal webpage, and we're in yellow, so they're supposed to be in
We're on
here.
the list.
Well, they're supposed to be in Gateway, so that's saying that they'll be coming through Gateway in the next week or so, I would hope.
Okay.
Does the different colors mean anything?
I didn't understand what it
There's
was.
a couple different
It must
colors
mean
being
something,
used
because
now.
there's different colors, I know that.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of yellow.
Yellow and kind of a green.
Green.
maybe,
Yeah.
Something else.
Okay, so we're waiting on that. Two other items for probably future meetings to put on the agenda, but to think about. Where do we stand on the building? Are we going to create a committee to figure out where we're going next with this deal to work with staff? Or you and Chris working on something? Or what's our next step relative to the building?
That's some of the things we wanted to actually discuss with the board.
At the advance,
At the advance?
that would be a great topic.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I did find
Easy
out
one.
some very interesting information, and that was actually the gentleman that writes we'll throw him some props, the Gateway Sun guy.
Sun.
And, that property up at the pool, I talked to Lee County, the zoning and planning department, and based on the zoning that's there, we could put a building there without having to go to any public hearings or anything. We could utilize that for the purposes of what you're wanting to do.
Are you looking at my notes?
Yes.
That segues right into my next one. Can we go along that line? I think that's a great idea. Go along that line and start the process of interviewing maybe park consultants to take that area we have up there. We have now successfully, for 6 months, kicked the can down the road as to the request of the residents of Silver Lakes, and there's others, about pickleball and bocce courts. We found that plan up in the attic, if you recall, that had a layout for the park. Can we get some consultants to come in here? And now with the mention of what the Sun mentioned, and I totally agree, I think that's a great idea, although I think the fun park would have been a better idea, but that's water over the dam. And get somebody in here that we can interview and give them some ideas of what we're looking for, and take the combination of looking at and reserving basically a site plan that we could take step A or phase one.
Multi-phased approach.
Multi-phased approach, and immediately start building at least the pickleball and the
Well, let's not
bocce.
put the cart before the horse. We just need a plan, and then
We
we'll
need a
determine
plan.
what we're
But
gonna
the
phase.
reason I brought that up is because the plan we looked at already had a pretty good layout, and I know Mike saw it. I think it needs to be expanded, especially if we're going to take and look at a consideration of if any type of a footprint for an office would be up there.
And
So,
I've got even an updated design draft of another
but
version.
we're doing a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about it here in a minute with the soccer. We aren't doing anything for. We're going to be talking about the soccer. We do a lot for the kids. We haven't done anything for the seniors, the adults. And this would fit right into it, and it's minimal cost. So we've got a plan that we saw that can be certainly expanded, but what we need is probably consultants to come in and talk to us would be the next step.
My comment, Madam Chairman, if I may, is that depending upon the project cost and the scope that we're talking about, whether or not to talk to the consultants, because they'll probably be engineers or landscape architects, and whether or not it
Both.
falls under the CCNA, depending upon the dollar amount.
Well, we're only getting them in here for the purpose of consultation, then let them come back and offer us some proposals.
Well, no, if
You have to be
if
careful
we
of
exceed the
the-
threshold, if the project exceeds, or the planning study exceeds the thresholds in CCNA, we need to go to the formal
Well, that's what I'm
CCNA
talking.
process.
We put out a request for proposals.
Well,
But we
it's more
can-
formal than that.
How about if
Whatever.
we just say we'll allow staff to work on that?
Yeah, because again, I don't know what the estimated
And
is
put
now.
that on the agenda,
But
because
if-
we need to do
But if
that
the
at the next
estimated
meeting.
contract project is not more than 2 million, if the estimated study does not exceed 200,000, we don't have to comply.
shouldn't.
We're going to be under those numbers,
Yeah, we're not-
believe
we
me.
shouldn't be-
Okay, so then it's a lot easier.
We're going to be under those
Okay.
numbers.
Yeah, so that's definitely for the advance.
But that's a less formal process. Just want to make sure.
That's all I had.
Okay.
And there was one other thing, I mean, with the continuing issues we were having at the fun park, I mean, there have been some people asking, you know, could we convert the basketball court into a pickleball courts?
We're not converting existing amenities. We want to look to add something. I think that's,
And there's room at the fun park to actually add,
Yeah, there's room.
there's room to add bocce there and also
Let's get those
pickleball.
keys.
I don't know why the person that we talked to, or the people that we talked to, we can't incorporate that along with the linear park all into one plan of, what's your ideas, what's your vision for all three of those?
Okay. We can talk about these things after retreat.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Utility manager?
It's a pretty good sized piece, it
Yep.
really is.
Utility
The
manager.
fun park, it's a pretty good sized parcel.
Good afternoon, Kenny Hall, utility manager. Utility manager report is out. You guys got the packet for it. There's one in there that I'd just like to draw y'all's attention to, the service account review that Leslie puts out. This is a really good snapshot. It's got really good information on it. It's got a lot of totals. It breaks everything down, meter sizes, really good information on that. If you had any questions on that report. We also had a modification for the water use, the irrigation permit for, WSP is working for Gateway in modifying our existing permit. They gave us a list of 7 things that need to be turned in. We've got most of them down. And that was about it for the utility manager's report.
What's WSP?
That's the company working for us, working on our permit.
I mean, is that their name, WSP?
Yes.
Who is it?
They are the people that Doug Wells is our main guy. He is working with Scott. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with them. They are kind of lobbying for us. We're working through them.
I mean, is this an engineering firm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and they specialize in these types of things. They issued us our last email received from South Florida Water Management District. It basically said that they would get a full modification for our permit, and they gave us seven different things that needed to be uploaded onto the website and there was a processing fee of $3,400 for us to renew this permit. And that was it for me.
Thank
And I'm
you.
also going through to,
So it's a combo.
I'm also going through the HOAs, and as our work crew moves along, I'm trying to get in front of them to let all the HOAs get in on to as many of their agendas as I can to let them know that we're coming through. And it's really been working out well with the Danish Preserve. We've been working really well with the HOA, so we have been finding so many clean out caps that are and digging out and having to go in and reset everything. Everybody is really happy with what we've been doing, and we've been we'll cut out 4-foot chunks of people's yards, digging these things out and then resetting them and then resodding them. We've had no complaints. We've had a couple issues where the residents had wanted them raised. They're afraid of trip hazards and such. But other than that, I'm trying to just get out in front of it so to let the residents know we are coming through.
Kenny was at the Hampton Park Town Hall meeting the other night, did a good job of explaining stuff, but both of us heard something we weren't ready for.
Right.
Water pressure problems in Hampton Park. And so I'm just wondering how many other places, you just don't
That was-
hear until somebody complains.
Right.
And that was not one, that was several people
Yeah, there
complaining.
was
I don't know
several
what the
issues.
issue is there, but.
I'm setting 2 data loggers in there to get on the water mains. I'm going to start there and then work my way back.
Right, but what I was leading to is he's going out and meeting with these HOAs as the opportunity presents themselves. And it's a good way to get our face out in front of these people.
Yes.
And just like that, we found out I've been up there for what, Jim, the last year. I had never heard anything about water pressure.
Yeah.
So I guess it just, the timing has to be right, but him getting out in front of these people is a really good idea.
And it's working out well. They say the Daniels Reserve is the first community that our crews, that they've actually been going in and doing these work, and it's worked out, it's been working out really well, really well.
Very good.
And that was
Thank
it.
you, Ken.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break.
So you hit my capacity.
2 acres. It's
2 hours.
2 acres.
So Margaret, is your